He was the most powerful CEO in the city, yet on Christmas Eve, sitting alone in a dark office with trembling hands, he whispered to himself, "There's no one left." That was the exact moment a small voice behind him said, "Don't cry, mister. You can borrow my mom." The city outside the glass walls glittered with Christmas lights, but inside the tallest building downtown, Daniel Hartman felt colder than he ever had in his life. At 46, Daniel had everything money could buy: luxury cars, private jets, awards on his office wall, but nothing that mattered tonight. The office was empty, the hall silent, and the clock on the wall ticked loudly, as if reminding him of every mistake he had ever made. His wife had left years ago, after begging him to slow down, to choose family over fortune. He hadn't listened. His parents were gone. His phone hadn't buzzed once all evening. For the first time in his life, the man who commanded thousands of employees felt completely invisible. Daniel sat at his desk, staring at an unopened Christmas card that had arrived earlier that day. He didn't need to read it to know what it probably said: another polite reminder from someone he barely remembered. His chest tightened, his breath grew shallow, and before he could stop himself, tears slipped down his face. He buried his head in his hands, ashamed of his weakness, when suddenly he heard the soft creak of a door. "Mommy said crying alone makes the tears louder," a small voice said gently. Daniel looked up, startled. Standing near the doorway was a little girl no older than 7, wearing a red coat slightly too big for her and holding a paper star. Behind her stood a woman, her eyes tired but kind, clearly embarrassed by her daughter's boldness. Daniel quickly wiped his face, standing up in confusion. I'm sorry. You're not supposed to be up here," he said. The woman apologized immediately, explaining she was part of the cleaning staff and had brought her daughter with her because she couldn't afford a babysitter on Christmas Eve. The little girl, however, didn't seem intimidated at all. She walked closer, looking up at Daniel with serious eyes. "You look like my dad did before he left," she said honestly. "But Mommy says sad people just need someone to sit with them." Daniel didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to him like that in years, not without fear, not without wanting something in return. The little girl smiled and added the words that would break something open inside him. "Don't cry, mister. You can borrow my mom. She's really good at making people feel warm." The woman gasped softly, mortified, but Daniel felt his knees weaken. Borrow her mom? The innocence of the offer, the kindness behind it, struck him harder than any boardroom failure ever had. He laughed through tears, nodding slowly. "That's very generous of you," he said. They stayed for a moment, awkward and quiet, but something had shifted. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel completely alone. And he had no idea that this small interruption on Christmas Eve would change the course of his life forever. Daniel thought the little girl's kindness had saved him that night. He didn't know the real truth yet, that saving her family would soon force him to face the one promise he broke that destroyed his own. Over the next few days, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the little girl and her mother. He found himself lingering at the office longer, hoping to see them again. When he finally did, it wasn't planned. He overheard the mother on the phone, her voice shaking as she whispered about overdue rent and a landlord who was tired of waiting. Daniel stood frozen, guilt creeping in. He had spent more on a single dinner than this woman earned in months. Without announcing himself, Daniel stepped forward and offered help, but not charity. He offered her a proper position in the company cafeteria, stable hours, better pay. She hesitated, pride battling desperation, but accepted for her daughter's sake. The little girl hugged his leg like he was an old friend. "See, Mommy," she said proudly. "I told you he just needed us." As weeks passed, Daniel started leaving work earlier. He ate dinner with them sometimes, learning what real laughter sounded like. The little girl decorated his empty apartment with paper snowflakes, turning cold walls into something resembling a home. But happiness has a way of uncovering buried pain. One evening, while helping the child with homework, Daniel learned the truth. The girl's father hadn't just left. He had promised to come back every Christmas. He never did. That night, Daniel sat alone again, but this time the tears were different. He remembered standing in an airport years ago, telling his wife and newborn son he'd be back after one more deal. He never came home. He didn't even know where his son was now. Success had cost him everything. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after they met, Daniel made a decision. He used his resources not to buy gifts, but to find his son. When they finally met, it wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, painful, honest. Apologies were spoken. Forgiveness wasn't instant, but hope was born. That night, Daniel returned to the small apartment where a little girl waited with excited eyes. "Did you borrow my mom again?" she asked. Daniel smiled, kneeling to her level. "No," he said softly. "This time, you lent me my life back." The message was simple, but powerful. Success means nothing if your heart is empty, and sometimes the smallest kindness from a child can save a grown man's soul.